Hey there, school leaders. If you've ever felt that constant pressure to be innovative, only to find yourself and your staff just drowning in a sea of new projects, well, you're in the right place. We're going to talk about how to get off that hamster wheel and build a clear path from just being busy to actually getting better.
So let's kick things off with a story. And I have a feeling this one might sound a little too familiar. It's a story that almost always begins with the absolute best of intentions. So picture this. There's this real spark of excitement. The leadership team says, "Hey, bring us your best ideas. Let's shake things up." And there's this amazing buzz in the air, a real energy around moving the school forward.
And then, bam, the floodgates open. Suddenly, there's a new digital platform to learn, a new student wellness program, a completely new timetable to try out. There's so much energy, so much movement, so much change.
But give it a few months, and that initial buzz starts to wear off. People are kind of looking at each other wondering, wait, why are we doing this again? There are too many things happening at once, and nobody's really sure what's working and what's just making more work. And here's the kicker. The school desperately wanted to innovate, but what it got instead was just overload. They ended up with constant novelty, but not necessarily real progress. It's such a common trap, but the good news is you can learn to see it coming and steer right around it. Okay, so if initiative overload is the trap, what are we actually aiming for? Let's get super clear about what a true innovation culture is, because honestly, it's probably not what most people think. This slide really gets to the heart of it. A real innovation culture isn't about the performance of looking modern or just copying the latest trend. It's about a disciplined, evidence-aware, purposeful drive to get better. It's a shift from "are we busy" to "are we improving?" And here's what that looks like as a definition. Just listen to these words. Disciplined environment. Identify problems clearly. Learn from evidence. See, this isn't about a chaotic brainstorming session where every idea gets a green light. It's a structured, strategic process designed to create real, measurable value for your students and staff. A healthy innovation culture is built on asking tough questions before you act. Instead of jumping to, "what's the new cool thing we can do?" you start with, "okay, what problem are we actually trying to solve here?" Being able to answer these questions is what separates strategic improvement from just, random acts of innovation.
All right, so how do we do this? How does this idea turn into a clear, actionable framework you can actually use to guide your school? Let's map it out.
It really boils down to these three critical stages. First, you start with your why, your purpose. Then, you test your idea in a small, controlled way. And only then, only when you have proof that it works, do you scale it intelligently. This simple path helps you walk the line between two really dangerous extremes. And this right here, this shows the two ditches you have to stay out of. On one side of the road, you've got rigidity, that this is how we've always done it mindset. And on the other side, you've got impulsiveness, the let's launch it immediately reaction to every shiny new idea. Both of these are toxic to real growth. So the sweet spot, the goal, is to find this productive middle ground. A place where you're open to new ideas, but you're also disciplined and thoughtful about how you test and implement them. You approach change with curiosity, not fear or recklessness. Okay, theory is great, but what does this actually look like in the real world? Let's make this concrete by comparing two schools that took completely different paths. So first up, we've got a school that basically just jumped on a bandwagon. They saw other schools were using some fancy new digital platform. It looked really modern and impressive, so they decided to roll it out to everyone, fast.
And the result? Pretty much chaos. Because they adopted a trend without first defining a problem, they just created more work, more confusion, and a ton of frustration. They got a new shiny tool, but they absolutely did not get improvement.
Now let's look at another school that took a totally different approach. They didn't start with a tool. They started with a nagging, real-world problem. Parents were consistently feeling like their concerns weren't being followed up on. And would you look at the difference? It's night and day, right? By running a small, focused pilot of a new system in just one department, they proved it worked. They solved a genuine pain point, gathered real evidence, and built confidence. That is what intelligent improvement looks like in action. So let's bring this all back to you, because at the end of the day, this all comes down to leadership. This isn't just about having a good process, it's about how you as a leader steer the ship through the messy waters of change. This is the fundamental tension every single school leader has to manage. Your job isn't to pick a side between stability and change. It's to hold both in your hands at the same time, to protect your school from reckless change while also protecting it from the slow death of complacency. When you get this right, you create a school that knows how to learn. A culture where your team can solve real problems, test new ideas carefully, learn from the results without getting defensive, and then, and only then, spread what truly works. You get to be more creative without becoming chaotic.
And at the end of the day, that's what this is all about. The most effective leaders don't just preserve their schools, they build schools that learn. Because that ability to learn and adapt intelligently, that's the real engine of sustainable growth. So what's one small, real problem your school could start solving today?